And I thought the media took it kind of easy on him. They didn't really come with tough, hardball questions. Like, I would have loved for somebody to ask him, why did you take your foot off the gas brake in the second half? Why did you stop the blitz packages? Why, did you play this cushion zone coverage? 17 points up, you let the Lions back into the game. Why? Why did you do that? Back at it again. RIC in the place to be. Ric Serritella here on this Wednesday, September 14th, 2022, here with you on the Football Playbook Show, brought to you by Ocean Casino and Resorts. Buckle up. It's Vikings week. We're turning the page onto the Vikings, and we've been chopping it up, breaking it down all week long. We've got two more great guests for you here today. Glenn Irby from USA Today, Eagles Newswire, will join us at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we have the great Kayla Santiago checking in 11 o'clock in the second hour of Power. Hey, it's your home for real Eagles football talk. That's what we do here on the Football Playbook. And, I had a chance to watch the press conferences yesterday, both Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. It's interesting to see. Good morning, all my chat room people. Shout out, what up? It's interesting to see the demeanor of these two guys when they address the media. It's quite interesting in terms of body language, if you're into that kind of thing, the kind of wheels that are turning with Jonathan Gannon before he delivers a response, because let's be honest, these guys are reading the press clippings. That's clear, very clear by his comments, very clear by the calculated responses by Jonathan Gannon in his press conference. He really likes to think before he responds, because he knows anything he says can be and will be taken out of context and blown up on the JAKIB Sports channel or any Philadelphia media market, right? And so I got to thinking, then I watched Shane Steichen answer questions, someone who I think is doing a good job. And the media, I think, feels that way as well, because you don't see Steichen getting criticized. Now, he's as cool as a cucumber. He's seems very prepared in his responses. You can tell he exudes confidence, Shane Steichen. I can't say the same about Jonathan Gannon. Now, both of these guys are really learning on the job. They're really learning on the job. And I think that's one thing that hasn't been discussed here on the show when it comes to Gannon and the defense is maybe you don't have a real defensive coordinator. Did you ever think about that? Maybe he's still learning. I heard Johnny Mack on Birds 365. Is it personnel? Is it scheme? I mean, he added 5 impact players on the defense. It can't be personnel. Isn't that what we talked about all training camp? How much improved the defense? It can't be personnel. It's got to be schematic. And so when you look at Gannon, who never really called a defense in his life until he came to the Philadelphia Eagles, never in his life was a defensive coordinator, a guy that I believe cut his teeth under Bobby Petrino at the Atlanta Falcons because he had a career-ending injury at Louisville, Gannon did. And so Petrino brought him to the NFL, I think, as a quality control assistant. And, he worked his way up the ranks as more of a defensive quality control assistant. Then he was a DB's defensive back coach. Then he comes to the Eagles. He gets handed the reins as a defensive coordinator. And what I was going to say is McMullen was saying, hey, well, there's 10 teams around the league running the Vic Fangio defense. Well, maybe Jonathan Gannon just hasn't learned to master it. Maybe that's why Vic Fangio is hanging out all training camp trying to teach this kid. And I say kid, he's my age. He's about my age, a little bit younger. But did you ever think about Jonathan Gannon? Maybe he's just not a defensive coordinator, or he's learning on the fly. It's what it looks like to me. You go from being a quality control coach to a DB coach to suddenly the defensive coordinator. I think that's a legitimate concern. And so, the question is Jonathan Gannon going to adapt and adjust like Nick Sirianni last year adapted and adjusted, right? Because Shane Steichen's another guy, never called the offense. I think, somewhere around that Lions game last year, we don't know exactly what game that Sirianni handed off those duties, but we do know Steichen has full play calling, close to full play calling control this year. And Sirianni still has his stamp on the offense, right? They're going to huddle up. They're going to meet. They're going to collaborate. Like Steichen said yesterday, Sirianni, if he wants something called in game, Shane's going to get it done. Like the buck stops with Nick. But I thought it was interesting just seeing how they took on the media. Gannon, he knew some, and I thought the media took it kind of easy on him. They didn't really come with tough, hardball questions. Like I would have loved for somebody to ask him, why did you take your foot off the gas brake in the second half? Why did you stop the blitz packages? Why, did you play this cushion zone coverage 17 points up? You let the Lions back into the game. Why? Why did you do that? I still don't know. Maybe the media will ask him. I don't know. I'm not there. It's worth asking, I think. So to me, it's like, hey, you've got a new, inexperienced offensive coordinator who I think is doing good. You've got a defensive coordinator who's never called plays in his life. And then, I took a look at the Vikings coaching staff. Like they're littered with experienced coaches, former head coaches. Where is that on this Eagles staff? Where is that on Coach Sirianni's staff? He made me chuckle the other day. I don't know if you guys saw it at the end of his press conference. Somebody asked him about mentors. And in fact, the question did come up. Should you have an experienced ex-head coach? Should you have a soundboard on the sideline, someone that's kind of been in that chair? And he said, thanks for asking me that question because I have so many great mentors. And the first one he threw out was Jay Wright. I'm so lucky to have Jay Wright as a mentor. I'm so happy he's an Eagles fan because I get to call up a basketball coach. I get to call a college basketball coach and ask him about coaching. Well, but wait, there's more. It gets better. Then he name drops Todd Haley. Todd Haley. Well, Todd Haley, he's a great mentor of mine. He actually said, I'm so glad you asked the question because I love talking braggadocious about my mentors. Todd Haley's your mentor. Wow. Now, listen, good coach, comes from a football. What has Todd Haley won? What has Todd Haley won that he's this great mentor now for Nick Sirianni? So, at some point, the media's got to wake up and stop blaming the personnel and understand it's got to do with coaching just a little bit, right? And luckily, Dan Campbell, the cheerleader, gifted a W to Nick Sirianni because, Dan Campbell, believe it or not, is actually not a good coach. Not a good coach. Did you see the game management? Not a good coach, Dan Campbell. In fact, Chris Spielman, I think, could be making a move there after the season. If the Detroit Lions don't win at least 5 games, I don't know. Dan Campbell might not last a year. Just saying. Now, on the flip side, I said, let me just go see what first-year head coach Kevin O'Connell did with his staff, right? Kevin O'Connell. Hires a defensive coordinator, not a first-time defensive coordinator, since O'Connell's this great offensive mind for the Sean McVay tree. He was down there and Jay Gruden at Washington, and he's this great offensive mind. So you know what he says? Much like Nick Sirianni, I don't know defense. Let me hire somebody who does. Not an inexperienced first-time defensive coordinator. No, let me go hire Ed Donatel, who, oh, by the way, has 31 years of experience. 31 years of experience as his defensive coordinator. He's coached guys like Champ Bailey, Brian Dawkins in Denver, Steve Atwater, Ronnie Lott. I mean, the guy has just breeded Hall of Fame talent around him, has coached it, has lived it. I mean, you talk about 3 decades of experience as your defensive coordinator. Oh, by the way, and this is what I don't understand about the Eagles coaching staff. Like, you have a salary cap that prevents you from signing so many players. There's no salary cap on coaches. Why don't you go get a Mike Pettin like Kevin O'Connell did? Give him an assistant head coach title. Who cares what his title is? You got a former head coach sitting next to you, Mike Pettin. That's what Kevin O'Connell did. I like that. Former Jets head coach. O'Connell and Pettin were together in Cleveland. And, oh, by the way, he's got 28 years of coaching experience, that Mike Pettin. So between Donatell and Pettin, 60 years of experience to help on the defensive side of the ball. That is what you call coaching staff. Oh, by the way, just for good measure, let's hire Greg Minuski as our linebacker coach. Wow, what an asset. What an asset. So Greg Minuski has coached 19 years in the NFL. He's played another 12 years in the NFL. He's got 32 years of NFL experience. So 3 coaches with close to 100 years of coaching experience to help the defense, because Kevin O'Connell knows what he doesn't know. Kevin O'Connell actually gets it. Kevin O'Connell said, you know what? Maybe I should bring in some experience. You know what? My first head coaching gig, maybe I should bring in a former head coach. Pretty smart. Pretty smart. Pretty smart. And Minuski's been a defensive coordinator. He spent the last 2 years at Kentucky as an assistant, but before that, he was the Washington Commanders defensive coordinator. He's also been defensive coordinator for the Colts, the Chargers, the 49ers. Like, the man knows defense. Mike Pettin, Ed Donatell. Like, the defense is in good hands because they're experienced. So you can install the Vic Fangio defense, but if you don't know how to run it, then you're going to get a result like you saw on Sunday, which was poor execution, bad game plan in the second half, combined with terrible fundamentals, most notably tackling, 15 missed tackles. You want to lead the league in the NFL in something? That's not the stat to do it. Now, I'll give Gannon credit. Very calm, very smooth talker, right? Deflects the questions, takes some, very calculated answers. His answers almost come across as rehearsed. Like, all right, well, if I get a question on this topic, here's my generic for that. If I get a question on that topic, here's my generic for this. Like, spare me the coach speak. It's all good. But at least he acknowledged, like, hey, we got to get better. It's on me to adapt and adjust. And so now that you took on that responsibility, coach, we're going to expect you to make the necessary adjustments. Now, I'm not there at practice. You know what I would have been doing all day today? Tackling 101. Tackling 101. Sometimes you got to start from the beginning. Sometimes you got to start from the scrap heap. Sometimes you got to start from the basics because you didn't teach it in training camp. You didn't do it in training camp, and it showed. It showed on Sunday. And I got news for you. Dalvin Cook right now, let Dalvin Cook. He's salivating watching that film. He's salivating. That's a hard-nosed, downhill type of runner. I would bet to argue there's not many running backs that make defenders miss or break more tackles than Dalvin Cook. If there is, there's not many that do. There's not many that do. And you thought DeAndre Swift was a good running back. Wait until you get a load of Dalvin Cook. Okay? Wait until you get a load of Dalvin Cook on that defensive line, which was an embarrassment of riches. I don't even want to add up how much money is accounted for on that defensive line. Embarrassing, and we keep saying Jordan Davis should get on the field more and more. You know what? There's actually some bad film floating around on Jordan Davis that I wasn't aware of. And shout out to our guy, Jordan Reisman from the Panthers that we had on, or the Lions. He put a film up on Logan Stenberg, the third string offensive guard for the Lions last week. He took out like 3 or 4 Eagles defenders on one run play, including Jordan Davis, who he just blew up, hit him from the blind side. So Jordan Davis still playing with his head on a swivel a little bit, probably why Marlon Tuipulotu is playing as much as he did, and he played pretty well. So, you know what? I haven't had time to go back and rewatch the All 22. I will. I'll see what I see. But to me, maybe we're too quick to give Jordan Davis a pat on the back. I got to go back and check the videotape, as Warner Wolf might say. But the personnel, the scheme, has got to change. Stop rewarding guys just because they work hard. Stop rewarding guys just because they give you a lot of effort in practice. Because, I'm looking at guys, TJ Edwards, 100% snap count. Marcus Epps, 100% snap count. They even got TJ Edwards playing special teams. I mean, this guy, they drafted Nakobe Dean. I watched Dean and Edwards coming out. Different players. Nakobe Dean, obviously a little bit smaller. I would tend to disagree with the guest that was on Mac and Mac. He's not a great coverage linebacker. That was actually one of the areas of concern coming out. He is somewhat smaller, and he can do it, but it's not an area of strength unless he really got good during training camp. Obviously, he didn't get good enough because he only played 3 snaps. But for everything that I heard about Nakobe Dean, you talk to the Georgia coaches, you talk to the scouting community. He's so smart. He's so smart. He's so smart. Well, is he not picking up the playbook? Is he not talented enough? Like, I would have loved for the media to ask why Nakobe Dean is only playing 3 snaps. Why? And do you anticipate him playing more as part of your adjustments? Because you said you got to clean some things up, Coach. Does that mean tackling? Does that mean schematics? Does that mean personnel? Very vague with what you said. What needs to be cleaned up? We'll see. By the way, we talked about the Derek Barnett injury yesterday. The Eagles making a transaction on the newswire. A little bit of gamesmanship, maybe. A little bit of gamesmanship by Howie Roseman here, because they signed Janarius Robinson off of the Vikings practice squad. Now, a 4th-round pick in his own right in 2021, hasn't been able to get on the field for the Vikings. I know one thing. He's not going to see the field for the Eagles this week. So they didn't sign him to play. They didn't sign Janarius Robinson to play. Why do you think they signed Janarius Robinson? What do you think? Try to pick that brain a little bit? Try to get a little edge? Eagles feeling a little pressure maybe? Looking at that Vegas line, 2.5 at home against what was statistically the most balanced offense in the NFL in week 1. Maybe he's trying to pick Janarius Robinson's brain a little bit, because this guy's never played a down in the NFL. I went back to the NFL Draft Bible scouting report. He came out 6'5", 266, so he's got great size. Florida native, nose for the ball, sheds blocks well, sets the edge, long arms, low pad level, technical feet, but lacks hip and ankle flexibility. That's kind of a big deal when you're trying to play the edge at the next level. So there's his downfall, flexibility. So, what he did do well at Florida State was setting the edge and stuffing the run as a 4-3 defensive end. He actually plays pretty well against the run. He had 104 tackles in 34 games at Florida State, 20.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. And, the athleticism is there. Size, athleticism, lacks flexibility, especially in the hips and the ankles, which, as you guys probably know, when you're living on the edge, trying to get after the quarterback, you need to bend, you need to dip, okay? So, Janarius Robinson, signed off of the Vikings practice squad yesterday. Oh, by the way, Zach McPherson, NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. Dan Campbell is the gift that keeps giving. Thanks, Dan. He gifted the award to Zach McPherson. Now, listen, I kid, I joke, but he made a good play. I thought it was notable that, McPherson recovered that onside kick. Special teams coach Michael Clay said, give McPherson kudos because he really was kind of the only player on the Eagles return unit that recognized the onside kick. He said McPherson told him afterwards he noticed the kicker had a little different trot when he was running up, kicking the ball, little different pace than the previous kickoffs. And he picked up on that. He was ready. He was in a very similar situation at Texas Tech where he got lit up. And he said, I just wanted to make sure I held on to the ball and eat the hit. And Zach McPherson, you did. You are NFL Week 1 NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. Stand up. Now play some coverage because you're going to have your hands full with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. It's going to be a heck of a matchup. And I want to get into that. We got Glenn Irby coming up in just a few minutes, Kayla Santiago in the second hour. But on paper, man, what a evenly matched team. Because I'll get more into the Kirk Cousins and Jalen Hurts debate. But just take a look at these wide receivers. We have a few minutes here. Like, I was thinking about it. Would you rather have – now, I know all the Eagles want Justin Jefferson, but let's just talk about today. Would you rather have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen or A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? It's a good question. It's a good question because to me, I want the ace. The ace is Justin Jefferson because the ace trumps all, right? Justin Jefferson, best player of the four. A.J. Brown loved you week 1. Going to be a stud here in Philly, no doubt about it. And I agree, probably the best receiver since T.O. in Philadelphia. Still a lot of football left to play, but I don't know. I would probably lean, I think Devonta Smith is better than Adam Thielen at this point of his career, but Thielen, my man had, Thielen is not the same player in terms of quickness and speed, but he's a better player in terms of savvy and smarts, right? Because my man, all he does, sniff out the end zone. He had 10 touchdowns last year. The year before, he had 14. Oh, by the way, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler. So I guess as good as the Eagles wide receivers are, I'm going with the Vikings squad, man. That's a heck of a 1-2 tandem. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Is there a better 1-2 punch in the NFL right now? Who would you put above Jefferson and Thielen? Maybe I'm overvaluing Adam Thielen. I don't know. A guy that has 24 touchdowns in the past 2 years? Sign me up. Justin Jefferson? I'm going to tell you like this. The best wide receiver in the NFL right now at 10:25 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday, September 14th, I hate to tell you, it's Justin Jefferson. He's the best receiver in the league. Give me the Vikings combination. I'd love to know who's better than that 1-2 punch. Maybe it is A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, but they got to go out and prove it first. I'm not just going to hand it to them. You got to show me. You got to show me. And I want to see the balance, right? The more balanced attack. I think Devonta Smith will get his in this week against the Vikings on Monday Night Football. I really do. And the Vikings, it'll be interesting to see how they game plan for A.J. Brown. Do they do double team coverage? I think I saw 50% of his snaps were lined up in the slot last week, A.J. Brown. And on the flip side, Justin Jefferson is another guy. They move him inside. They move him outside. They line him up, X, Y, Z, all over the field. That came up in Gannon's press conference, I think, in terms of, okay, well, if you have Slay on Jefferson, what do you do when the Vikings start moving them around on switching sides of the field, putting him in the slot? If you're going to have just Slay follow him all game, well, maybe you are tipping your hand with some of the schematics and coverage on defense. Something worth noting. I know we talked about it with Tone yesterday on the show. Like, you know, there might be some situations where Avonte Maddox suddenly winds up on Justin Jefferson. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? Well, we'll see how Glenn Irby feels about it right after this break. It's the Football Playbook here, Wednesday, September 14th. RIC in the place to be. Ric Serritella telling it like it is when it comes to Philadelphia Eagles football. Going to pay some bills. We'll be back right after this.